Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of the Growing in Faith podcast. My name is Cole Hughes. I'm the Associate Pastor of Family Ministries at First Baptist. Been here for coming up on 2 years. I work with kids birth through high school graduation and their families. And sitting next to me is my friend Ryan. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, my name's Ryan Abel. I'm a close friend with Cole, as he mentioned. I'm new here to First Baptist Church. I started coming once Cole's been, through Cole's encouragement over the past few months, he's been encouraging me to start coming, and I decided to, come on out, and I've enjoyed my time here very much.
So just kind of some backstory, a little bit more about who we are and how this came to be, this idea that we had. So we've been friends for a long time, can't remember.
First grade.
I guess, yeah, first grade. But we grew up together, did things together. We went to church together in youth group when we were younger. I got saved around the time I was 8. And so when I was around 13, God called me to ministry through a church camp. Ryan was actually... Technical difficulty there. So where were we at? We were talking about just some background for this story and how it came to be. I'm here at the church, as I mentioned, and I had a project I was working on just kind of cleaning some things up, going through some stuff, and I had a closet that's in the youth room I was wanting to go through and kind of sort through, see what things we needed that I didn't know we maybe even had that were kind of tucked back away, see what things maybe we could get rid of to clear some more room for some other things we had, and so I decided I might ask Ryan if he wanted to help. I was wanting to encourage him to get involved anyway, and I'll let Ryan tell you a little bit about what he walked into that day.
A nightmare is what I walked into that day. He said, he gave me a call and said, "Hey Ryan, what are you doing tomorrow?" And, like the guy, I am nothing usually. And he just mentioned that I should come help him clean out a closet at the church, here at the church. And I was like, sure, hell, I'll help you clean out a closet. Why not? So I didn't expect to walk into a storage unit type closet upstairs, and we were in for a long couple of days. It didn't just take one day or an afternoon that I was expecting. It took us 2 whole days, but that day was it was pretty special. As we were cleaning, we got to talking about some things about my life, his life, and it really turned into a Bible study really that day. For about 2 to 3 hours, I had my Bible in the truck, went out there and just had a makeshift little Bible studies life group session, and ever since then I've felt my life kind of take a change for the better. I've been feeling God ever since that day, and I thank Cole for that, for definitely guiding me into the right direction and encouraging me throughout this process.
And so we'll kind of get a little bit more into like the podcast, how that came to be. It kind of came in those couple days we were talking and through some of that. So Ryan, I'll let him expound if he wants to anymore, but he had mentioned, we were involved in a youth group together, but just at different points in his life kind of stopped looking as much into his faith. He'll admit that. We were talking about that before, but he stopped kind of looking at that as much and kind of was just doing his own thing, whatever he wanted, and so he hadn't really been involved in church probably regularly since...
I was saved at 8, and I was baptized at 8. And like you mentioned, we were in the same youth group, and I was semi-active in church in high school early on, and then as I grew up later into my teenage years and my early 20s, I was saved, but I didn't have a relationship at all. I was definitely not living for Christ and for God. He was way down on the priority list, and but I knew it was wrong. Like, in my mind, I knew the way I was living was wrong, but I also didn't care either. But Cole's been persistent enough, and I definitely feel my life has been changed. I've been able to see.
And a lot of what with what you said, we talked, and you were very certain that your salvation was real and that you just had been fighting God for a long time and kind of come into. So what we decided was we wanted to sit down and we both like podcasts, something you can stick on while you're driving or while you're just sitting, like you're doing some work around the house or whatever it might be. Whenever you listen to a podcast, but we decided maybe we could do something like that. A big important part of the Christian experience, the Christian life, is discipleship. It's the investing in believers and other believers and growing in our faith, growing closer to God. And honestly, if we look back at your life, that's something that you didn't get a lot of. You didn't have people maybe investing, making sure that you stayed and helped you grow and helped you to see and help you walk through things. And so it's easy to wander and to do our own thing when we're not being discipled. And so something that, as Ryan was talking about, if you hear me call him Abel, that's just how I always talk to him. But something he was talking about was he wanted to grow in his faith, but he didn't know where to start. So we decided we're going to start looking how to do that, to grow in our faith together, because I'm continually always growing. Like, I'm definitely not perfect. As I was called to ministry at a young age, but it's taken a long time to get to where I am, and I still, along the way, had plenty of times where I could have done a lot better for God. But just kind of like going through life together, figuring out things, talking about some stuff that's going on in our lives, going on in the world around us, different issues that we face, and just kind of talking about it together in a podcast. So maybe you can enjoy it and kind of maybe get something from what we're walking through together as we taught how to title it the Growing in Faith podcast. So the idea, the hope would be if you start with this episode and then you look maybe a year from now, if we are able to continue and blessed enough to continue with it, then you'll see our growth. You'll see the continual growth and discipleship that we have, and the way it changes us as we go deeper in God's Word together, and try to build each other up as Christian brothers. And that's the thing, trying to help each other stay accountable, trying to help each other walk in our faith together.
And we definitely got the idea for this podcast during that day, and during our conversation that we had during that day. We just felt that these are good questions, good conversations that we had, that we just wanted to share these conversations. I know that I felt, and I kind of confided in Cole, and I was speaking with Cole about, I felt a little bit intimidated coming to church, especially talking with Cole, because every time I would have a problem or say something, he would like, oh, you know what, I know exactly this story or what in the Bible, and he'd go right to it, and I'd feel like, man, I don't know anything. Like, I know that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, but I felt like I didn't know anything about the Bible itself or chronologically that happened through the life of Christ, and he says, you'll get there as you grow in faith, and the idea was born.
I think that's the biggest thing is doing something to grow in your faith, because that's the thing is no one is any different than anyone else. We all start in the same place before God as sinful people, and we are saved by the same grace that's offered in Jesus Christ, and we have the same Bible we can study, and that's what it is whether or not we have people helping us along, and whether we're doing it faithfully, trying to grow in our faith. And so that's the whole idea. And maybe we don't know what it'll end up looking like. Maybe we'll have some guests at times. Maybe we'll have other people we get to talk to at times. But the hope is just generally that, trying to grow in our faith together, just through life, asking questions, not being kind of afraid to dig into things and talk about it together. But
maybe Tim Tebow will come.
You've heard it here. Maybe Tim Tebow will be on the podcast.
I know Tim very well.
Yeah, you watched him a lot, right?
Yeah.
on TV. So, so kind of, I guess we're gonna go ahead and get started. So we were talking a little bit about some things going on. That's kind of what it is. What's going on in our lives now? What are the things that we need to learn on, focus on? How can we see how God is moving in our lives now? So what were kind of some of the things we were talking about that's pressing right now?
Well,
what's going on in your life?
What's going on in my life? I have a very stressful time in my life. I am moving, and I have a pregnant wife, and we have a 2-year-old. So it's a very stressful time to be moving with a toddler and a pregnant spouse. So yeah, and it's pretty hard to stay focused on God first, especially with how stressful this whole scenario is. And I start a new career in a week. On top of that, so I'm moving, and I'm about to start a new career, and it's all pretty overwhelming at times. Yeah. And I definitely this past week have been guilty of not putting God first, and I've been stressing, been worried almost to the point of tears. But my wife Danielle, she's been in my ear as she's very calm and collected. She is definitely the driving force of this, and she's always just pray about it. This is just something that you just need to pray about. Just pray about it. And she seems to have the right idea, but I'm still trying to stay on that path.
And I think that's something that's important as we go through it. Satan's very real. Spiritual warfare is a real thing. And he will use whatever he can to try to take our eyes off God, trying to change our focus, trying to change our frame of mind. It's something that we've talked about before, and I think you'll remember me saying one of the important things is that it's not so much about like a list, right? I think that's terminology we use a lot, God first. But it's about how God is in everything we do, how God is central to our very lives, right? Because it's not sinful to be in a time where you're busy, You have a lot of things going on. I mean, I'm sure maybe many of you can relate to. You have a lot going on, and that in and of itself is not sinful. Really, you're doing a lot of things, so you can be doing a lot of things that glorify God in that. You can glorify God in many things as you're doing stuff. But the important thing is not to lose sight of who you are and who you're serving and what you're about in the middle of those things. So we were talking about that a little bit before we started, and that's kind of how we hope for this to be, kind of have a little communication on what is going on and what we're going to maybe talk about in the podcast before we do it, but then really talk about it on here for you guys to see, kind of go through it. And so if he's got questions, we got questions. We haven't hopefully rehearsed much. He's given me some info so we can look at stuff because, I have to figure things out. I don't know where everything is. He was saying he's very nice in what he said about me, but I still got to look stuff up. Got to figure out what the right answers are. So we were talking about being distracted and losing sight of what Jesus is to us and how he should be in our lives. And so one of the things that came to mind is Peter denies Jesus. We're coming up on Easter is in a month.
Oh, we
and
are.
Yeah, so leading up to Easter, there's a lot of events that happen. Jesus is betrayed. He's arrested. And at the Last Supper, when he said someone would betray him, he also tells Peter that he's going to deny him 3 times. Okay.
And Peter says no.
Peter says, no matter what happens, because he tells him how he's going to be betrayed. He says, well, no matter if they all leave you, no matter what, I'm not going to leave you. I think it's right here. He says, you will all fall away because of me this night. And then Peter says, though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away. And Jesus said to him, truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And all the disciples said the same. So here you got the men who followed Jesus here with him as he's telling them, hey guys, my purpose is coming. I'm going to die. This is what I'm here for. And they're like, no, we're going to stay with you. He's like, no, you're not. You're going to fall away. You're going to fall into temptation. And it's on the same, like you open the Bible, it's here, right over here. You see Peter denies Jesus. So Jesus is arrested. And I'm going to read to you from Matthew 26:69 through 75. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, you also were with Jesus the Galilean. But he denied it before them all, saying, I do not know what you mean. And when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and he said to the bystanders, this man was with Jesus of Nazareth. And again he denied it with an oath, I do not know the man. After a little while, the bystanders came up to and said to Peter, certainly you too are one of them, for your accent betrays you. Then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, I do not know the man. And immediately the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. So we see here that Peter has sworn to Jesus, like, I will not betray you, even if I have to die. And then things happen, as Jesus said. He was in the garden praying. He was betrayed by Judas. He's arrested. And Peter is outside seeing these things going on, seeing Jesus that as he's in prison, and he denies him. The very same thing he swore he would not do just earlier. And so what goes on is when there's so many things going on around us, so many difficulties, so many struggles we see, it's easy to do the easy thing, right? It's easy to lose focus. You see even earlier with Peter where he was walking on water to Jesus. And when did he start to sink? It was when he
lost faith,
was aware of what was going on, right? All the things around him. And he started to sink. And he said, why did you doubt? Jesus said, why did you doubt? And so it's not so much that we go into things looking to doubt, looking to be distracted, looking to deny Jesus. But when there's so many things going on around us, sometimes it happens. Sometimes it's easy. And we see even Peter, one of the premier disciples, one of the ones that was in Jesus' inner circle, ended up denying him. And later Jesus reinstated him because Peter realized his wrong and repented, turned back to Jesus. That's important. That's important. When we realize we've struggled, when we realize we've fallen, it's important that we repent. We turn to Jesus. We go to him because he is where our hope and our help comes from. So kind of looking at some of those things. So what do you see, or what is any questions like pop up in your head looking at some of that kind of stuff? If not, it's okay.
I don't believe I have any of that questions during then. I feel like I can definitely relate to Peter.
Yeah.
For sure. Not at this point right now, but definitely, a year or two ago for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely can relate. Denying Christ. And
well, I was thinking more like maybe the circumstances are different. Like you're not denying him, but I think in times of high stress, right?
Oh, sure.
So like that's kind of where I was going with it. In times of high stress, right? It's easier to stray away from what we're seeking to do, right? So our second camera just fell over, so it's okay. But do you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I was going with the idea of it. Was that in times of high stress, it's easier to go away from what you had said initially you would do. So like, I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to put God first in my life. I'm make sure I'm doing these things. But then sometimes when I'm moving, we've got a baby on the way, and I'm starting a new job. Like that's when Satan will try to use those things as a reason to pull you from what you're thinking you're gonna do, right? Because like it hasn't been super long as you've been like recommitted to like trying to follow more closely, right?
2 months, I think.
And so now all these things are happening. How easy would it be to just not, right?
Oh, of course.
And so that's where I think it comes down to. I mean, think about like spending time in God's Word daily is an important thing to do. But how many times are you like, man, I gotta be up really early, so I really want to get up earlier to spend time with God's Word. Oh, I'm too busy during the day, or oh, it's too late now. I gotta get up early. I can't, or oh, I gotta tend to this or tend to that. Like it's so easy to let things be washed away, to be not the focus of our life, to be not what we're seeking to do. Or how many times maybe there's someone you could help, that you're driving down the road, or you know of someone that's in need, and it's I'm too busy for that. I can't do that. There's so many things around me. The thought is, I'll never do that. Like I'll always put God first. I'll always seek Him with everything, right?
Of course.
But then you get in it, like Peter, I'll die with you. But then you're facing it. You see what's happening in front of you, and then they're accusing you. I don't know him. What are you talking about? So. I want to send me someone I can help today. You ever thought that? Like, I hope you pray that. If you haven't prayed this, it's something you should pray. It's kind of a dangerous prayer because you're asking God to make you uncomfortable, to challenge you to do things. But send me people I can help. I want to reach people. But then, how many people do we walk by where we don't share our faith? Or how many people do we walk by that maybe are in need? And so that's kind of part of the challenge. Is I think we live in a very busy culture. If you've ever been anywhere else, sometimes like I know I went to Ireland on a mission trip when I was in high school. I was like shocked at how slow and like lazy their days were. Like not lazy, but just they weren't chock full of stuff.
Relaxed.
Yeah, they weren't just full of stuff. Like it seems like now it's you got 5 things on the calendar overlapping, and how do you make it happen, right? When really that can be one of the biggest distractions that Satan will take advantage of in your life to take you away from focusing on God. But like I said before, it could be a benefit. You could be you could just sit in your life and you can look, man, I get to have the opportunity to live in a place and be better for my family. I'm going to start a new job around people that I can be an example to Christ. And when I have the opportunity, I can share my faith. I have all these things. When I have a new baby that I can lead to know Jesus more. Like, there's all these things that like can be distractions, but when God is central and you do stay firm in your faith and firm on the foundation, there's so many opportunities, right? So maybe, I don't know, somebody out there's coaching a baseball team or softball team, because that's what's coming up right now. So that's like a lot of nights of your week. That's a lot of focus, but you have the influence on all these kids that you're around. You get to be a godly influence. You get to share your faith. Maybe you're running 3 different you get to share your faith and be a Christian example of what it means to lead. There's so many ways that busyness can distract us, but there's so many ways that when we stay rooted in our foundation of Christ, the things we're doing can be for His glory and can lead others closer to Him and lead ourselves closer to Him as we see what He's doing when we actually do it. So that's kind of the gist of the main thing we have. Is there anything else that any things you're thinking of, or I think we're kind of to the end of that part of it. So if there's not,
I mean, I definitely can relate to that, I totally agree.
Welcome back. As I mentioned, this is our first episode, so we took a little break just trying to collect our thoughts, think through things a little bit. We want this to be real, not super formal. So we're going to continue our conversation. One of the things Ryan mentioned at the beginning was he felt kind of insecure in his faith coming back into church. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as Ryan explains. So,
well, one thing I definitely feel like I need to work on in my faith is my patience. I feel like I lack a lot of patience. What do you think, Cole?
I think a lot of people lack patience. We're laughing because we had to start this a couple times because I made a joke about Amazon delivering things in 2 days. But we live in a culture where it's very, very quick gratification. Like, you order something, it comes really quick. You know, fast food, videos are on demand now. You don't have to go rent them. You don't have to go buy them. You don't have to wait for them to come out, video instantly. So patience is one of those things, like, nobody has that anymore. We're trained not to be patient. So you can keep going,
Yeah, that's definitely something, like this whole move process, Heck, I'm moving in on Friday. We're shooting this on a Tuesday, and I'm like, I just want it now. Let's go. I want to get going. Trying to get everything organized and just ready to go, and I just want to get it finished and done, but that's not how the world works, It's not move-in ready even. No. And, we don't have the help. We just don't have the logistics to even do it right now. And why? Why is that? Why can't we just get it done, No. And, I mean, there's commercials about stuff like that. That old J.G. Wentworth commercial, I mean, they made a whole song about it.
It's your money, you need it now. And that really is...
All those people are very impatient, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that people...
But it is their money.
But people prey off of that. I mean, seriously, because those things are usually not beneficial to the person that's using them, right? Yeah. Like payday loans. Those are not good for you because they have really high interest rates. But patience...
300% interest rates.
And patience is one of those things, you've probably heard it, like, don't pray for patience, because then what's God going to give you? It's like...
a bunch of stuff to test your patience.
Ways to be patient.
Yes.
And I'm sure having a toddler, you have times where you need to be patient.
Definitely.
And with a move, and there's so many things. So being patient, I don't think there's anybody that I know that is extremely good at patience all the time. I think it's situational. Like, I know there's times where maybe I do well with patience in this thing, but there's sometimes like, man, I have no patience in those situations, Like, sometimes I think that's
I have less patience with, like, people that I should have the most patience with.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes the people you're closest to, the people you love the most, are the people. It's because I guess you're more comfortable, right? So you express your impatience. I think that's probably a better way to say it. Like, I'm impatient a lot of times, but I just kind of I don't. You don't.
You
vocalize
brush it off
it.
better.
You don't vocalize it because it's not appropriate, and that's something that's something to be real about with growing in our faith. Like, just because you don't express it doesn't mean it's not wrong, Like,
You know who tests my patience the most? My puppy.
Mm-hmm.
Zero patience with the puppy dog. That's been the downfall, I think, of my patience.
Yeah.
Especially in tight quarters.
Yeah.
Why'd I do that?
We're good. We're gonna. But I think that's part of it, right? So just because we don't express our patience, or impatience, it's like you're with somebody, they're in line in front of you. I mean, this has happened to me very, very often. You're in line and you're at a store, and somebody is going. Someone gets in front of you. Is that a sign? Sorry, more technical difficulties. First episode.
The production and setup is
passable, but occasionally has problems. You'll see a picture later. We took a picture because it's kind of funny. But that's the thing. We get back to it. Sometimes just because we keep things inside doesn't mean that that's not still maybe sinful. Like Jesus said, don't murder people. But if you're angry with them, you're still guilty of hating that person. And so
I've been guilty of that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's easy. Oh yeah, I haven't killed anybody, but maybe I've been angry with a lot of people.
I've been guilty of murdering people, I guess. Not actually murdering somebody.
The second part, where you're angry with your brother.
Yeah.
So.
Or sister.
Person.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. A lot of things. The one thing that grinds my gears, I tell you what, I'm at the self-checkout line. You got a guy with a full cart of stuff at the self-checkout line. That's just, that's that. I'm guilty of that, and sometimes I want my double cheeseburgers a little too quick too. So.
Mm-hmm. So what other things? You got anything? What other things have made you feel insecure? So patience. I think we all struggle with that. If we're honest with ourselves, it's always hard.
I just need to pray about things a lot. Just need to pray about it, and that's one thing my wife Danielle tells me all the time. She's always telling me I just don't pray enough. Like I just need to pray, and we're supposed to be. What I've heard, we're supposed to be in a constant state of prayer. Like, just all the time, just in a constant conversation with Jesus and God. And that's one thing, And I think that really, ultimately, generates my lack of patience and the amount of stress and anxiety that I have is because I'm not in that constant state of prayer. I'm not always, hearing or speaking with Jesus about my anxieties, about my lack of patience, so to where he's not telling me, like, it's all good. It's all good. You're good. And, I've blessed you with these things. Don't be stressed about it.
Yeah.
I got you.
I think that's tough. I think establishing a prayer life, it's not something that's really, I don't think it's always natural for us to pray. It's something that it takes like humbling ourselves and talking to God. And I think the hardest thing is to actually like give him stuff, Like it's easy to say, God, please help me with this. But
for sure.
It's hard to just give it to God and let him take it, and to just trust him in it, that everything, in children's church, we're talking about purpose, right? How everybody, what you were made for. That's what purpose is, what the stuff we're going through talks about. But we have a verse of the month every month. And this one is Romans 8:28, talks about how God is working all things for the good of those who love him, for those who are called according to his purpose. And that's all. It's a promise from God that he works all things for our good. Doesn't mean only good things happen to us, but all things work for our good in the end. And that's a hard thing to trust, even though God never breaks his promises, that we should trust him all the time. But knowing, no matter what happens, no matter what we face, God is working all things for our good, and that's hard to trust. I know for me, there's times where it's there's so much uncertainty. And I think moving, when you're in between, going from one place where you're settled, and you're there's that time where all your stuff's in a moving van, like you're getting that U-Haul, everything's in there. You don't have a place where you live right then, Like when we bought our new house, we closed on a house.
That's really scary.
And then 6 hours later, or for 6 hours, we were homeless. Well, I like to say that we weren't homeless. We were about to go buy our next house. We were about to close on the next one later that day. But for a period of time, we had all our stuff in different places, and we didn't have anywhere to live. And things like that. I mean, that's a big struggle in society. There's a lot of people that struggle with a lot of anxiety and a lot of crushing anxiety. I know you mentioned that's a struggle you got with being anxious and worrying, but there's people that, even more extreme than that, because we just live in a world where we're so uncertain. We're so...
and that's what even gives me my anxiety and my stress, is that I'm not stressed about the move. I'm stressed about unpacking. I'm stressed about getting settled, and that part hasn't even happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, haven't even worried about, like, what if something happens wrong with the truck? What if something happens wrong with the move? What if Cole can't help me? Not banking on that yet. But, you know.
I'll be there.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in between them, but I'm worried about, let me get my stuff set up. You know, I want that living room set up with a nice TV. And I want to watch the Wildcats play in that living room on Friday night. And we're moving Friday night. And I want to watch the Wildcats play in my new living room.
I think one of the biggest things, and this maybe can be like our closing thought for the day. Okay, I think this is a good one to close on.
Let's do it. Dear God. Let's get us through it.
Our closing thought. So, the more we learn to trust God, the more we learn about who He is, I think the easier it is to worry less about our surroundings, right? The more we figure out how big He is and how He's in control of all things, how He's working things for our good, the less our daily lives seem to matter, and the struggles we face and the uncertainties, because the things that could go wrong ultimately can't affect our God or can't affect our relationship with Him. So closing thoughts on that part, like the stress. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, it's not like just because we say that doesn't mean it's easy to do it. But the more we learn about Him,
you clipped.
That's okay. The more we learn about Him, the better we can deal with those things. So, is there any other areas of your faith you feel insecure about as we kind of just set things up going forward?
Of course, there's so many different things I feel so insecure about, but I mean, it will be a 10-hour podcast. That's part of the podcast. You know, we continue to talk about this, and we show the difference between episode 1, episode 100 to episode 1000. If we get there, that'll be about 10 years.
That'd be a long time.
No, that'll be 20 years.
Depends on the frequency.
Podcast.
You go daily. I mean, it would be.
Oh yeah, if we went daily,
yeah, it would be 3 years. So it's nothing. But I think that's a big part of it. I think we should all strive. I mean, because that's something I have to challenge myself with daily. Like, we just, constant prayer means like we're constantly relying on Him, constantly looking to Him.
Exactly.
To be so like, oh, I'm stressed about this, but we know God's got everything in His hands. Like, He's got the whole world in His hands. Like, we sing like sometimes the kids' songs that we sing have so much truth in them, right? Like,
my daughter sings a lot of that Baby Shark stuff, and I heard that in a church song or in a church setting. That has nothing to do with anything. I've always thought when I was a little kid that could have tied in somewhere.
Baby Shark?
Baby Shark.
No.
It doesn't really tie in anything.
Jesus
no
loves
lessons.
Me. That's a good one.
That's the only one I know then. I mean, what
He's
other
got the
children's...
whole world in His hands. Got the whole... All right, that's it for our first episode for today. We hope that you will join us next time. As we said, we hope to improve every time. This is our first episode. It's very difficult to do. We're just two guys trying to grow in our faith, hoping to encourage you as we do it. And we will see you all next time.
And if anybody has any suggestions about making this show less bad, that's our goal. That's our whole goal in this, is to make each episode not be as bad as the previous.
And to encourage you guys as we go. So
honestly,
hope you all have a great day. So.